unbelievable. That is absolutely unbelievable. Hamish Kerr has just sent this crowd into raptures.
Erica Fairweather, the 20-year-old New Zealander, is about to claim the gold medal here.
It has stayed up. He's willing that bar to stay on.
Lewis with plenty to do. King Shishi's closing, but Hobbs has got a half a metre and beats Lewis.
New Zealand in front. Poland trying their hardest, but New Zealand are going to be world champions.
Our biggest sports stars are getting ready for the biggest sporting event.
The start of an Olympics unlike any other. Tuesday night's preview of the opening ceremony shows the unique way organizers plan to make next summer's Olympics games wide open. Fans and spectators will be at the Olympics for the first time since the Games in 2018 in South Korea.
The first two official 2024 New Zealand Olympians are hardly household names.
Sarah Tetzlaff and Julian David will represent the country.
And their sport seems a little, well, obscure.
They will compete in the speed climbing event.
But they are already champions.
Making it. That's it! She's done it. Sarah has done it.
I'm Sharon Brett Kelly, and today on The Detail, we're on the countdown to the Paris Olympics in less than 5 months. So who's in, who's out, and what are our medal hopes? I talked to two young athletes about getting ready for the biggest event of their lives. But first, Dana Johansson, RNZ's in-depth sports journalist, on just how different Paris will be from Tokyo.
There'll be a 3-year cycle this time because the Tokyo Olympic Games were delayed a year due to that COVID-19 pandemic. So that just has shortened the runway for some of those athletes in terms of being able to structure out that cycle. And yes, of course, when Tokyo did get underway, it was under very tight restrictions. There were no crowds. Athletes were kept very much in a bubble and separate from one another where it was possible. And so those that did go probably missed out on that kind of traditional Olympic experience where you can mingle with athletes from other sports and other countries and get that real quintessential village life, I guess.
What about security? I imagine that's going to be really tight in Paris.
We were the target in Paris of major terrorism attacks. And, who's to say that this is behind us? I think that is the major threat that everyone's preparing for.
Much of the worry is focused on the opening ceremony, planned to take place along the River Seine in the heart of Paris in late July. More than 500,000 spectators are expected to gather along the river. President Macron said recently that there are alternate plans in place if a serious terrorist threat arises.
Yeah, you've seen a number of issues in France in terms of terrorist threats. There's also been rioting that sort of affected the Rugby World Cup. So that's been one of the huge concerns, as it is for all Olympic Games, is security, but certainly heightened for Paris.
How many athletes is New Zealand sending?
It's unclear at this stage. That the full team won't be confirmed until sort of late May, early June. But sort of as a bit of a gauge, there were 199 athletes at the Rio Olympic Games in 2016. In Tokyo, there were 212. So I expect that the team will once again sort of be in that 190 to 200 range, down slightly from Tokyo possibly because we know that team sports tend to boost those numbers a little bit, and we've already seen that the Black Sticks women have failed to qualify the Olympic Games, so they will not be in the team. But it's really a really challenging time, and we have to be careful about the terminology that we use, because when we talk about who has been selected for the Games, who's booked their ticket to Paris, at the moment the team stands at a total of 2. But of course we know there's a number of world-class athletes in New Zealand that have achieved those qualification standards and are just waiting for that to be rubber stamped.
But in the meantime, they're still doing full-on preparation, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. For, all those athletes on the long list for Paris, their entire year is geared around being there in July. So they've structured their seasons to make sure that they are peaking come July, and also making sure they're getting in some world-class competition in the lead-up. So we've seen a number of our track and field athletes, for example, over in Europe, sort of testing themselves against the best over there. Others are sticking closer to home and really in the thick of that training and ensuring that they can peak in time for July.
In terms of newcomers, well, we know we've got our speed climbers. Who else are amongst the possible probables this year?
I think we can safely bet that athletes like Dame Lisa Carrington will be in there. She's obviously been number one in the world for a decade. And also this time around her... the K4 team, they're world champions going into an Olympic year.
Dame Lisa Carrington, Alicia Hoskin, Olivia Brett and Tara Vaughan, stunning favourites Poland, delivering our first World Championship gold in a K4 event, male or female, qualifying the boat also for the Paris Olympics.
Then in track and field, we've got Tom Walsh, Eliza McCartney, Sam Tanner's been going really well. In the swimming, we've seen some brilliant performances from Erica Fairweather and Lewis Clareburt. Cycling also, Elise Andrews and Aaron Gate have featured, quite prominently and tend to dominate those World Championship events. Hayden Wild, he's performed extremely consistently on the World Triathlon circuit since Tokyo.
Can we expect the same amount of medals as we got in Tokyo?
At this stage, the projections are slightly lower than what they have been for the last two games, and probably we need a little bit of context considering that there were 18 medals in Rio, including 4 gold. At that time, that was a record medal haul for New Zealand, and then they topped it again in Tokyo with 20 medals and 7 gold. This year's projections are around that 14 to 18 range. That's because probably it's been a shorter cycle. The other thing is we've had a lot of retirements in the past 4 years or 3 years. So the likes of Dame Valerie Adams, who has been one of a consistent performer over many Olympic cycles. We've had a number of rowers retire, particularly from that men's 8 that won that surprise gold in Tokyo. So Hamish Bond is no longer there. Another very strong rower that has retired in the last couple of years is Grace Prendergast, who was the reigning world champion in the women's pair and also part of that women's 8 that won silver. She did the double up in Tokyo. She has since retired as well. So that's possibly why projections are slightly lower, but certainly anywhere in the sort of above 10 is pretty good going considering the size of New Zealand.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, how much, of course we love getting a medal and we love getting gold and it is such a thrill. But should we be celebrating the fact that even getting to the finals or, as you say, in that top 10 is such a big deal?
Yeah, I think there is a sense of national pride in winning medals. There's nothing like the warm glow of reflected glory to sort of perk the country up. And if you recall back in 2000, New Zealand came away with just 4 medals, including 1 gold. Rob Waddell winning the only gold back in Sydney.
No one can match Rob Waddell. Let's watch him come home. Black gold at Penrith Lakes.
And that was considered an absolute disaster. So there does seem to be this huge emphasis on medals. But I think sometimes we need to contextualise performances. If you think of an athlete like Zoe Hobbs, the sprinter.
New Zealand record holder at 10.96. Please welcome Zoe Hobbs.
Zoe Hobbs, she's fresh off running overseas in the 60 metres. She got a fantastic start. That first 20 metres is just incredible. She's strong through the middle, got nice knee lift. She is sort of a possibility of making an Olympic final in the women's 100. If she could pull that off, it would be an extraordinary achievement. She'd be competing at a level that no other New Zealand athlete has achieved, certainly in modern times. And it's a global sport. It's hugely competitive. Likewise, swimming is another big global sport. And if we can have swimmers feature in the final, that's huge.
Speaking of the swimmers,
let's go to a pioneering moment in New Zealand swimming.
Erica Fairweather, the 20-year-old New Zealander, is about to claim the gold medal here in the 400 metres freestyle. What a performance. Erica Fairweather, history is being made. She wins for the Kiwis.
She won the 400 metres freestyle at the World Championships in Doha.
The first New Zealander to take gold in the 50-year history of the long course event. On top of that, she set a new personal best time.
What are her chances of getting gold again at the Olympics?
Yeah, I think we possibly need to temper expectations a little bit with Erica Fairweather. She was a very deserving world champion and, as you mentioned, created history in Doha. And she also won silver in the 200, so had a good haul there. But she'll absolutely be in the medal mix. But there were also a number of big names missing from that event, as a lot of countries tend to focus on their own national trials at this time of the year. Countries like the US and Australia, they have such depth that the athletes need to fight even to go to an Olympic Games. So Fairweather has the 5th fastest time ever. So she absolutely will be in the medal mix, but she will have a fight on her hands to make the podium, that's for sure.
Our cyclists, they're kind of interesting, aren't they? Because there's been such an overhaul of the coaching regime.
Yeah, that is a program that had a lot of intervention.
Cycling New Zealand and high-performance sport officials fronted up with the findings of their inquiry following the sudden death of former track cyclist Olivia Podmore last year.
Michael Herring QC was back today, 4 years after his first review of cycling's high-performance environment. Olivia Podmore was a key contributor, detailing her experiences in a toxic environment from 2016 to 2018.
A raft of damning findings about that Cycling New Zealand environment, and it's forced a really renewed focus on athlete welfare and in particular hiring coaches that have genuine EQ. And I think we've seen the turnaround in the program. That women's sprint program is now really flying because they've put the emphasis in that they've actually not treating the women like men as they had been doing in the past. And that's really been led by Elise Andrews, who won silver in Tokyo. She's now the world champion in that event, the Keirin event, and she's been sort of led the women's sprint program as well. Aaron Gate is another who has been absolutely dominant. So there's absolutely high hopes for the team in Paris because they probably underperformed in Tokyo. So it'll be interesting to see what they can deliver this time around.
Let's look a bit closer at our teams because, as you mentioned, the Black Sticks didn't make it, but we do have other teams. So what are our medal chances?
I guess the key medal chances in the team sports is rugby sevens, both the Black Fern sevens and the All Black sevens. The women are probably just edging the men in terms of what you'd call podium certainties.
Black Ferns Sevens have finally clinched a gold medal in this season's World Seven Series. After getting a silver medal in Dubai and the bronze in Cape Town, the women got the job done in Vancouver today.
The Sevens has just got incredibly competitive since it became an Olympic sport. And, in the last event we saw countries like Brazil doing really well. Other countries are starting to see the medal opportunity there. They're starting to promote the sport within their countries and build really strong programs. The other one certainly we'll have hopes for following closely after last year's Women's World Cup is the football Ferns. They have qualified, so it'll be good to see them build on their results.
There's some really amazing individual stories here. I'm thinking of Eliza McCartney. I mean, her incredible comeback.
New Zealand pole vaulter Eliza McCartney has flung herself to victory at the World Athletics Indoor Gold Meet in Liévin in France.
She's endured a really tough last 4 or 5 years. Obviously, she burst on the scenes in Rio, winning that surprise bronze medal in a sport we've never previously had any pedigree in the pole vault. Yeah, and then we just saw her grow and go from strength to strength, and then suddenly she just got hampered by injury after injury after injury, and it kept her out of international competition for a good 4 years. I'm not sure if you remember sort of in the lead up to Tokyo, they did give her a chance to sort of qualify at the last minute, leaving it right up to the end of the selection window. There's a series of 3 events held out at Millennium for her, and it was just so awful to watch, and you could just see the devastation in her face. That sort of prompted a sort of overhaul of her support staff, so she started training with various other biomechanics and strength and conditioning experts to sort of overhaul her technique, because I think what was established was that her constant run of injuries was actually partly to do with poor technique modelling. So she had to completely learn like new ways of running and basically learning to walk again from scratch. So yes, and then she finally got back into competition, and that was about the same time as Jeremy McCall was investigated by Athletics New Zealand for a number of breaches.
The man responsible for guiding the careers of some of the country's premier Olympic athletes has today been handed one of the most severe penalties in New Zealand's sporting history. Pole vault coach Jeremy McCall has resigned from his high-performance role and been banned from any involvement in athletics in New Zealand for 10 years.
So Eliza has found a new coach in England. She did have the world-leading jump as of last month, but this month she's just been overtaken, but she's still well in the mix if you can continue to jump consistently. You've got to remember with a lot of these programs, it's not just the athlete, there's a entire industry around them of various support staff, and if they don't, have the right culture within that team, then it can be hugely disruptive.
Let's look a bit closer at that industry and the importance of the culture with a couple of young athletes. Here's discus thrower Connor Bell.
So I've got a tight team of people around me. There's my throwing coach, Kirsten Hellier, my strength and conditioning coach, Ricardo, and he's also been working with me since October last year. I also have an athlete life manager who helps me deal with the logistics of, managing some of the life stuff and organising my schedule around competitions and finding ways to manage time while I'm overseas so I don't go stir crazy. And then I've got my sports psychologist and my nutritionist and a physio.
Track and field is sort of the glamorous part of things, isn't it, in a lot of ways? And you're going to have this massive audience around you. How do you gear up for something like that?
I think I'd be lying to you if I said I could do something to really prepare myself to step in front of however many people it'll be. Might be 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people. It's a lot of people. And it's an awful lot of noise as well. When I've been at World Championships, it's kind of just, you get hit with a lot of nervous energy. And it's almost about, rather than finding ways to overcome it, it's about letting all that nervous energy in and then using it to enable your performance. So I think I'm expecting it to be pretty intimidating, but that's a good thing because something I've found when competing against really good people at significant meets, where there's either a bit of money on the line or there's a title or, that meet holds some significance for some reason or another, that if I can deal with that negative energy in a way that amplifies my throwing, my energy in the circle, then that's really good for my throwing.
What about when you're competing against your own teammates for Olympic selection? Curtis Imrie is a canoe sprint athlete vying for final selection in the men's K4 crew from a group of 9. He says they're all working towards the best boat speed.
Well, we're trying to create a pretty awesome culture around putting the boat first. Obviously, there's 9 of us going for 4 spots. Only going to be 4 guys sitting in that boat at the game. So everything we do throughout the day is impacting the boat that's going to be competing at the Olympics, yeah.
Right, you're fully dedicated to making that boat go as fast as possible.
The competitiveness is always good there. It's just we do a lot of work with our psych and stuff like that and making sure that we, keep each other accountable on, the task at hand, and that's making the best boat for New Zealand and keeping each other in line. I think as guys, you're always measuring each other and want to be the best. So it's trying to do it in a way of impacting the team in the right way rather than putting your teammate down. We've obviously done a lot of work over the years, and from where we've come from for where we are now, as guys trying to, make each other accountable. At the start, it was, it just felt like nagging at each other, but now I think everyone in the team's got a little bit more trust in each other, and we have these psych sessions to be a little bit more, try to be a little bit more vulnerable around each other to make the team stronger in a way.
Yeah, canoe racing is a sport that also has had a lot of intervention over the last 4 years. They had a number of cultural issues sort of crop up around 2018 to 2020. Amy Fisher, she famously withdrew from selection contention for the Tokyo Olympics because she just felt that the environment was not a healthy one and that she couldn't be part of it. So obviously she's managed to find a healthy environment now. She's happy with the changes that have been put in place within Canoe Racing New Zealand, but also, the men have obviously looked at what's occurring in the women's program and tried to implement some of that as well.
That's fairly new, isn't it? I mean, years ago, you just would it be a case of if you're the athlete, you just do what you're told and get on with it?
Yeah, 100%. It's if you wanted to represent New Zealand and earn the fern, then you did what your coach said, and athletes didn't have a lot of say in the environment. I call 2018 the year of reckoning really for New Zealand sport. That's when we had a huge number of reviews into various troubled sporting environments. We had women's football, we had women's hockey, and then kind of less public, but also sort of more internally, environments like Rowing New Zealand and Canoe Racing New Zealand have had to sort of really look inward, and because they had a number of issues arise. So I think gradually, like it hasn't been an overnight shift, it's been very gradual that people have recognised that you do need to put athlete welfare at the forefront of everything you're doing. You need coaches with emotional intelligence, along with great strategists and people managers. Rowing New Zealand is another one that over time we've seen a real shift in the focus of that environment and being a lot more flexible. You've had mothers return for the first time. Like it used to be considered that once you had a baby, then that's your career done. But we've seen a number of new mums return to the environment and be well supported in that environment.
What do you expect these Olympics to reveal about development in sport? Because often at the end there seems to be a reflection on, why didn't this sport do well? What are your expectations?
Yeah, I think often at the end of every Olympics we have that sort of crude calculation of how much did each medal cost? You look at the investment in the sport and then how many medals were won, which I think if we're going to talk about athlete welfare and, this heavy focus on medals, possibly the media need to look at themselves and how we write about that, or the narrative that we put around that as well. And in terms of that, I think what we've seen very clearly over the last 3 or 4 Olympic cycles is the sports that have the most investment are the ones that deliver the most medals. But high performance sport have now got a new investment strategy in place. I don't think we'll see the results of it this round, but possibly next round, where they are investing in more sports across a broader range, what they call their emerging sports. So that's where we're really seeing the likes of speed climbing come into place. And I think once you get a sense of how those types of sports can really inspire New Zealanders and give you those warm fuzzies, and also because I guess the real thing you want to see out of these games is more kids inspired and taking up sport. So that's the real measure of success, I think. So if come August there are 100 kids lining up to get into the clip and climb because they want to take up speed climbing, then that's a real win as well.
That's it for today. The Detail is supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This episode was engineered by Jeremy Ansell and produced by Gwen McClure, Alexia Russell and Davina Zimmer. Thanks to Dana Johansson, Connor Bell and Curtis Imrie. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Mā te wā.